I'll just expand a little bit on some of the choices that can be made when determining how to evaluate things in a process control situation. As we move in the digital world, we print on weirder and weirder materials. And that makes it a challenge for the instruments. Instruments that are only made to measure on flat paper don't necessarily do a good job of handling the bumpy surfaces and that sort of thing. And the Barbieri instruments are great. We love them for their flexibility and their ability to measure strange materials, frankly. But there are some important steps here, clearly. When the measurements are taken, we gather a whole bunch of information. But the purpose of that really is to calculate color differences. Delta E is a very important part of that, as you can imagine. And the ranges of delta E are very important. The idea behind it overall is that less than 1 delta E is unnoticeable. Greater than 1 could be a problem. Greater than 5 tends to be a problem, and greater than that, even more so. Determining the pass-fail can be a complex process. I wanted to speak a little bit about the myth of the single metric that we've seen in the industry, with some customers getting confused about this and saying, I just want one number to tell me everything I need to know. And that doesn't work very well. That really does assume that you have a single type of customer and all they care about is one thing. And on top of that, that everything in the print process, the equipment, the paper, operators, the environment, and everything else is only expected to have a single type of problem. And that's just not practical. A single go, no-go, pass-fail grade is definitely possible. And most process control systems will offer that, including ours. But it's not going to be based on a single metric, and you probably don't want it to be. Gray balance is very important. We get involved in G7 and near neutral calibration a lot in the industry, and that helps in a big way make print stable. So you'd think that matters the most, but it matters the most until you realize the customer's brand colors are more important, or flesh tones. And there really are a lot of challenges involved in balancing the needs. So we've broken it down here into 2 different groups. The things you want to monitor for customer satisfaction, like the smoothness of the imagery. That's the kind of the calibration stuff I'm talking about, and that also includes gray balance. The color brand colors, saturation and dynamic range of the images and that sort of thing. There are a lot of these parts that are generally about the viewing and just the pleasing nature of the images. Then there are the items that you should monitor that have to do with what you can control. From an engineering perspective, they say you should monitor directly the things you can control. It's like in the digital world, calibration and profiling, the ink and media that you're using, whether or not they get contaminated, whether or not the correct media was used, because that gets incorrectly chosen at different points. Different consumables that can age within your printing system, your environment, and the workflow. The workflow is really very important because the digital front end and the RIP side of things it needs to be configured at the beginning, of course, but that can be changed unintentionally. The wrong calibration selected, the wrong print queue selected. And if you are sampling in the right way, then you can detect when that kind of problem emerges. So ongoing color verification requires these measurements of color patches, regularly. They should be distributed around through the gamut, and they should include the basic things like ink channel values, like not just cyan, but different tints of cyan, and the media color. That goes a long way toward verifying that the correct medium was chosen. How does our system help? Well, we give the kind of rapid go, no-go color approval. Our system is called Maxwell, and we utilize the Barbieri instruments and others to help the operator quickly take measurements and give the feedback directly to the operator so that they can quickly see in a visual way the pass-fail nature of things, as well as any possibility problems that might be emerging as a printing system shifts, that kind of idea. The final color quality is essential here. Making sure that, like for instance, G7 metrics are used to get good calibration, good gray balance, that sort of thing. and a variety of these different metrics to make sure that things are tested across the needs of the things I mentioned before, whether it's the different types of problems the customer might recognize, or also indications of the things in the system that you can change or that could be accidentally changed. An effective system also gives enough information to shorten the troubleshooting of the problem. When problems occur, it's nice to have a little more information from additional patches at times, or some additional analysis that helps the operators or press techs or other support personnel to look into the problems in a little more depth and see what kind of things might be going wrong, whether there are ink contaminations or, as I mentioned, media problems, measurement problems. It's nice to have a system that actually monitors the measurement equipment itself and allows you to do verification of that. And then allows you to share that information with the support teams, whether or not they're located on the same premise. And those can be internal support people or your vendors or consultants or whoever you choose to help with that support side of things. The idea is to get you back into production quickly so that the problem can be diagnosed, fixed, and then production can proceed as quickly as possible. Trend lines are also very helpful to see when problems are starting to emerge. This kind of thing can definitely happen, especially when you have, for instance, ink contamination or nozzle clogging. Those can accumulate over time. And so they might show up a little bit in an earlier measurement, but as they go forward and measure regularly, you can start to see trends emerge. Instrument problems can also show up in this way when the instruments get dirty and that sort of thing. The barbiers have some nice features to help try and keep the optics clear in industrial situations, especially, where with textiles and all the fiber problems and that sort of thing, which is nice. But you can get these kinds of problems emerging, and it's nice to be able to keep an eye on them. Another place this can occur is for heating, ventilation, HVAC kind of problems. And they can show up over time. It's also very nice to have comparisons between the current behavior of a press and the past behavior from a diagnostic perspective. You can get a feeling, because sometimes a support person won't necessarily be that familiar with just how that particular output device works on the media and that sort of thing. There can be more variation in some systems than others, and also from the measurement perspective. So it's nice to have comparative data to look at and compare with the past behavior. You can look at it and say, well, it looks a little weird right now, but it seems to always print that way, for instance. Or you can also do press-to-press comparison, which can be very handy to allow you to see how different your presses are. If you have multiple output devices that are supposed to be printing in a similar manner, it's nice to be able to do a quick comparison of that, get a feeling for whether or not that's occurring. That can help you move jobs back and forth or split jobs between presses. It's nice to have multiple output devices, but it's essential that they operate in a very similar manner so that you can split a job across them and it doesn't look any different from the customer perspective. Ultimately, the idea behind a system like this is to give you confidence. I love this picture of this little fellow. He just looks like he owns whatever world he's in. And it's nice to be able to gain confidence from a system like this. And we've done some analysis of this and determined just how a process control system can aid in giving confidence all the way across a printing organization. Whether you're just receiving delivery of new equipment, you're doing print product design and development, you're laying out some new print thing that you want to do, and in this digital world, there's some great opportunities here. It's nice to take measurements at that time and have your group gain confidence in that process, but then, of course, when it goes into production, you can take measurements at that point and confirm. Because production can often involve different setups, maybe different media, different workflows, and you want to make sure that when things go into production, that they are reflecting what was developed by your print product group. Of course, sales loves to be able to see that a system is stable And they also like to be able to know when they try to win new customers that they can say things with confidence, like, for instance, that they can print to certain standards, for instance, or that their proofing system matches the production system well, and these sorts of things. It's nice to have that confidence from the sales point of view. Customers love to have access to this kind of information if you want to allow it. And there are ways to do that in a limited manner that doesn't necessarily put you at great risk. In fact, it doesn't have to put you at great risk, but it can allow the customer into the fold and increase the relationship you have with the customer. And they like that. When it comes to managing press rooms, as I mentioned, being able to compare presses to each other, facility management can benefit from monitoring environmental information. We monitor actual outdoor environment and weather information in addition to facility temperature and humidity and that sort of thing if customers want. And then if problems arise, you can see if it's related to a problem that has to do with keeping your humidity stable or your temperature stable. And we have customers who print in environments that can be quite different from winter to summer, for instance. And they like to be able to see if the systems are being held stable, and then also if that affects color, so they can overlay and do that sort of thing. Again, tech support, press techs and operators can benefit from this. In fact, we've noticed operators love this sort of thing. At first, there can be concern from operators and from management that the operators aren't going to like this. They're going to feel like all this monitoring is bad, but it turns out they do like it. In many cases, in most, in fact, they really do like it because they can see the direct influence that their actions have, and they can also see when they're doing things properly. They can prove effectively that problems that are occurring aren't their fault. So this reaches all the way up into the company management, but knowing how to make changes to the HVAC systems, for instance, as well as the color team, knowing things are being measured in the standard way and that the instruments agree with each other and that sort of thing. So there are a lot of benefits across all of those things. I've kind of zipped through these slides fairly quickly. I just wanted to give an overview for how the metrics that you choose can make a difference, and that it's wise to choose a variety of metrics to keep an eye on your color monitoring system and give you good feedback both from your customer's perspective and from your own.